Well, hey, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Uh, if you've watched Taming Your Gremlin Part 1, Taming Your Gremlin Part 2, 3, and 4, then you know that we've covered three of what I call the basics of pleasure. The basics of pleasure are about staying cool, calm, collected, and relatively content, even in the midst of outrageous upheaval. So, basic of pleasure number one is to make feeling at peace, feeling simple contentment your number one priority. Basic of pleasure number two is to remember that doing that is primarily, not exclusively, but is primarily an inside job. It's what Tim Galway calls an inner game. That's not my term, that's Tim's, and I love it. I think it's great. Basic of pleasure number three is to remember that that inner game, that inside job, begins with staying very aware of where you end and everything else begins. Miraculous sheath known as your skin. As I mentioned to you last time we talked, it's about 2 millimeters thick. It's waterproof. It's tough. When the top layer of it gets rubbed off, it's replaced by living layers below. I can tell you, every experience you have in this life occurs within the boundary defined by your skin. Events occur around you, and a lot of them involve you, even if you don't want them to. But your experience of every one of those events occurs from your skin in. So on the most fundamental level, if you can keep this thing feeling calm, collected, relatively content, you're home free, you're in good shape. It's just a handy skill to have. It's very efficient. Well, the fourth basic of pleasure is breathe, damn it, breathe. See, breathing is an amazing thing. I mean, healthy breathing for healthy people comes easy. Thousands of sound sleeping adults and infants do it without giving it a thought. I'm going to tell you something that may be a little old hat to some of you, but I really want you to hear me. Really pay attention. Very important. Well, for one thing, at some point you're going to stop breathing, and when you do, your body's going to rot. But until then, it's important to take in all of the air that you want and to exhale fully. So I want to show you something. And again, this is not new, may not be new to you, but I want you to put your hand, tell you what, put it just below your belly button. Your own belly button, by the way. Now, watch me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exhale. I'm going to exhale fully. And when I do, my abdomen is going to collapse in. So watch. This feels backwards to some people. I'm going to exhale. See my abdomen go in? Now I'm going to inhale. And my abdomen goes out. Now I'm going to exhale. And now I'm going to inhale. Some people call it belly breathing. It's how a yogi or yogini breathes. It's how a runner breathes when she hits her stride. It's how you breathe when you're in the zone, when everything in you is going one direction. When you hear about people really being in the zone, just really everything moving perfectly. That's how you're breathing. Now that's an exaggerated version of how you breathe, but that's how you breathe. It's how you breathe when you're having a nice dream. But when you get anxious or uptight, the reverse is true. Put your hand back on your belly button for a minute. Just below it, actually. But watch this. The reverse is true when you get uptight. It's like this. Now I'm exaggerating, but that's how you breathe when you're uptight. And when you do that, you cut off your body and a lot of your natural abilities to intuit and to problem solve, and your awareness becomes concentrated in your intellect. You become one big brain. Now there's more to you than your brain. You're not your brain. Although I would be the first to admit you would be a bore without it. But your awareness, when your breathing gets shallow, becomes concentrated in your intellect. And as I said, you tend to cut off your body. In the process, you have the option of doing some constructive thinking, but you also can get caught up in what I call ruminating, which is just going over and over the same facts and figures of a particular dilemma over and over and over again. And the result is going to be, it's a done deal. Eventually, you're going to get up tight. That's why we call it uptight, because you're up tight. Your awareness is up here. And when that happens, you're going to create, first of all, tension right here in the center of your chest. Your breathing is going to be shallow and there's going to be tightness there. That's going to be followed by tightness up here in your shoulders, and that's going to be followed by tension or discomfort wherever the weakest area of your body is. Okay? So, healthy breathing, as I said earlier, is not difficult. By the same token, it's important to attend to your breathing, because your breathing is not just a regulator of your inner experience. Now, really hear me. It's not just a regulator of your inner experience. I'm not simply saying to you, breathe deeply. I'm saying to you, your breathing, in addition to being a regulator of your inner experience, is an indicator. It's a gauge. When it gets shallow, it's telling you you're at the front end of either creating misery within yourself or contributing to misery. You know, sometimes misery is started by an external force, right? Tension is. Like the first video you may have watched of mine, there was someone that blared a horn at me and I got tense. Well, blaring horns come in many, many forms. Divorce, famine, loss, threat of a loss, terrible things. But when you make your breathing shallow, you may not create the misery, but you will contribute to it and prolong it. So it's important to attend to your breathing. I might also mention, by the way, that as we talked about in our first video, there's a beautiful, beautiful force inside of you. You can call it prana, ray, chi, ki, life, the primordial vibration, the kingdom within, God. Doesn't matter what you call it, because you can't circle it with a word. But it's in there. Well, that infinite force is connected to something finite, your body, which, as I said earlier, will eventually rot. Those two things are connected by your breath, and together they create the entity that answers to your name. So your breathing is worth attending to. It's about as close as you can get to that thing that you really, really are. So that's basic of pleasure number 4. Thank you so much for being here and for your interest in gremlin taming. And I look forward to being with you again soon.